I'm a retired professor of psychology from Wellington University. The following is my story regarding my time there. In particular, my time with Calvin Dowler. I taught a psychology class of more than 75 students who ranged from freshmen to seniors. The classroom itself was one of those theater-like rooms that you see in the movies. The chairs and their built-in boards ascended to the top of the room. Naturally, my more inattentive students sat in the very back, which is to say they sat at the very top, in the darkness. You see, I liked my classroom's lighting a certain way, dimly lit. Any deviation from that interfered with my lecture. I couldn't and still can't concentrate with bright lights. My first assignment was to have the students write an essay on the topic of psychology, of course. The prompt was, "What do you think psychology is?" Some of the essays turned in were great, others were expectedly half-assed, and some were never turned in at all. But Calvin Dowler's essay, my! It was almost as if he'd written it before and knew what was expected of him. Needless to say, I gave him full credit, and he was the only one who got that perfect score. Mr. Dowler was an excellent student, superb. Although I informed the class that I don't take attendance, he always showed up on time and never missed a day. Never. He always walked in class with a wide grin on his face, offering the same greeting. "Morning, Professor Coyle." He was of average height, physically fit, with dark brown hair and a baby face. In the beginning of the semester, he seemed to be able to make friends with the other students easily. But then time progressed, and with that comes change. Sometimes for the better, and sometimes for the worse. As a professor of psychology, I'm quite good, and in fact certified, for evaluating individuals. Sometimes that's my job. Mr. Dowler was an intelligent young man with an above-average IQ. I know this because he once told me he watches Rick and Morty. Isn't that something the kids say these days? All jokes aside, let me get back to my story. I began to notice odd behavior in my classroom, but not from Calvin. He remained his same, happy self. I noticed the other students gradually moved farther away from him. At a time, Calvin sat at the front of class, listening intently to every word I professed, along with several other students. This day, however, he sat in the same spot alone. The other students sat together somewhere else. Why are they neglecting him? I thought to myself. One night I sat in my kitchen grading papers. The assignment this time was to write about a childhood experience that the students believed helped shape who they were now, whether it be in a positive or negative way. Then I read Calvin Dowler's essay. I picked it up as I always did, with excitement and genuine anticipation. Like I said before, he was a great student who never failed to impress. But this must have been a mistake. As my eyes raced down the page, my heart began to beat rapidly. His essay was inundated with curse words and detailed gory descriptions of some event. One line read, "I tried to catch the bitch, but she was too fast. She hit me in the back of my head pretty good. Gotta give her that. There was blood everywhere, but I just sat there laughing like a lunatic." Whether or not these words actually transpired, I wasn't sure. The week before the end of the semester was what I like to call the opening of the floodgates. That's because students would come to my office hours to ask me their questions before the final exam, hoping to salvage their grades in the last week. My office hours were late. They began at 6 p.m. and ended at 7:45 p.m. The students didn't like this, of course, but they also didn't like failing the class. One student named Adeline walked in. She was also one of my top-performing students, so I wasn't surprised to see her show up so late to get some extra help. She also happened to be one of Calvin's friends, or former friend. I couldn't help myself. I asked her why she and the others were ignoring him lately. "Professor, Calvin's not who you think he is. I don't want to say too much. I actually don't want to get involved if you don't mind." She stuttered. She didn't look at me when she said that, implying something. I wasn't sure. There are several reasons why someone won't make eye contact with you in a conversation, including emotions of fear. I let it go. I responded, "That's fine. I didn't mean to be a bother. I just found it strange because you all seemed to be getting along in the beginning of the semester." Adeline wasn't the last student who visited during my office hours. One student after another came by to ask questions and get help before the exam. And then Calvin showed up. It was 7:53 p.m. and my office hours were now over. But I made an exception for Calvin. After all, he was my best student, but I also wanted to ask him some questions myself. He walked in and sat down, with his eyes on the floor the entire time. Before I could speak, he let out a quick, "Sorry." Pretending to be ignorant, I tilted my head, waiting for elaboration. "I think I sent you something in place of my actual essay assignment. That was an accident. I didn't mean to turn that in. I have no idea how it got mixed up in there." "It's fine. Here you are." I handed back to him his foul, gruesome, curse-riddled essay. He then unexpectedly got up and headed for the door. I asked him where he was going. "Is that it? You sure you don't have any questions before the final?" "Nope, I'll be fine," he responded. I didn't get to ask him my questions. Mainly, why did he write that in the first place? It was dark outside by the time he left, but I didn't leave just then. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I began to connect the dots, sitting there at my desk as if I was solving a mystery. Students have shunned him, including his best friends and his study group. He accidentally sends me this sadistic letter, which, even now, I have no idea if it's true or not. Moreover, he always had on this fake smile, this forced personality of happiness. But lately he's been showing antisocial behavior. Adeline seemed nervous when I asked her about him. What's going on? Maybe the kid's a psychopath. But how did I miss something like that in one of my own students? Nonsense. He's just going through a phase, a very weird, unusual phase. As I sat there thinking all this, I noticed the time. 8:34 p.m. I grabbed my coat, switched off the lights, locked up my office, and left the building. I got in my car and started the engine. I drove off, speeding through the empty streets. I made a sharp turn, spilling my cold, forgotten coffee all over the passenger seat. When I arrived at the next stop sign, I took some time to clean up a little. That's when I noticed Calvin's letter, the same one I returned to him just a few minutes ago, sitting on the passenger seat. I was shocked and confused. As I continued driving, I adjusted my rear-view mirror, only to find that a wide male grin had filled it. I'm a math teacher in a small-town high school. Among my students, there was one unusual boy named Tommy. He was quiet, never spoke, and didn't mingle with other students. Yet, he always scored perfect in all tests. One day, out of curiosity, I tried to engage Tommy in a chat, but he quickly walked away without saying a word. He had a certain coldness about him, which was quite off-putting. I decided to get in touch with his parents. However, the school records had no contact information for them. I found it strange, but shrugged it off as a clerical error. Cryptic aura around Tommy piqued my curiosity. I tried asking around town about him. Everyone's answer was surprisingly the same. No one knew him or his family. One day, at a local diner, old Martha, an aging longtime resident known for her sharp memory, overheard me talking about Tommy. She beckoned me over, a worried expression on her face. She claimed that there was a Tommy fitting my description who used to live in town, but he had died in a car crash 15 years ago. My blood ran cold. Everything around me began to spin. Was it possible that my student was a ghost? I returned to school the next day with a lump of fear in my throat. I kept my distance from Tommy, who appeared normal as ever, acing his math test. Somehow this normalcy sent shivers down my spine. I started digging through the old school records, which were in a chaotic state. After days of searching, I found what I was looking for, a yearbook from 15 years ago. There was Tommy, looking identical. The caption under his picture read, "In loving memory of Tommy, who left us too soon." I was scared, but decided to confront Tommy. After the class, I asked him to stay back. He didn't move or speak. He was just there, standing, looking at me with blank eyes. I asked if he had died 15 years ago. Tommy smiled a sad, chilling smile and said, "Yes, but I had never been good at math. I wanted to learn it properly." Frightened and speechless, I saw him walk out of the room, disappearing into the crowd of students in the hallway. He never came to my class after that day. I told my story to a few colleagues. Some thought I was joking, others believed I was hallucinating. But old Martha believed me. We decided to hold a small memorial for Tommy by the tree in the school grounds. It was our way of telling him it was okay to move on. Since then, I've never encountered anything supernatural. But Tommy's incident etched a lasting impression on me. In silent nights, when I'm all alone, grading papers, I can still feel a cold breeze and see a faint reflection of a boy smiling at me from the empty desks. The experience was a grim reminder. Not all our students carry the weight of their backpacks. Some of them carry the weight of their souls, caught between worlds, unready for the adventure ahead. Tommy was a weird kid. Quiet, soft-spoken, almost timid. I was initially worried something was happening at home that was keeping him so walled off from the other kids. Until I met his folks at a parent-teacher's night at the school. His parents were a very nice young couple, and just as eager to ask me about Tommy as I was to ask them. They were just as puzzled about Tommy's soft nature, and initially thought he was on the spectrum, although they had yet to have him tested. At recess, Tommy wouldn't interact with the other kids, instead opting out to play alone on the swings or drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick. Until one afternoon, a group of boys in the grade above him got together and decided to make fun of poor, quiet Tommy. I saw the whole thing happening from across the playground and began walking over to intervene. One of the kids was a notorious bully, a real gorilla for his age, standing a whole couple of heads above other kids. He towered over Tommy with a basketball in hand. I saw him wind up, ready to slam dunk onto Tommy's head. But when he let go of the ball, it just hovered there in midair. The ball started to spin, picking up momentum and speed, and went sailing back into the bully's face, breaking his nose and sending him ass over tea kettle to the ground. I was halfway over to them when I saw this. I didn't know what to make of it, but I knew it had something to do with Tommy, who, the whole time, mind you, hadn't even looked up from his stick drawing in the dirt. After that, absolutely nobody interacted with little Tommy, kids, bullies. I even saw ants and other bugs skitter off the other way when he was near. The school I worked in was grades K to 12, so even after Tommy left the first grade, I would still see him around the school. The other staff would congregate in the teacher's lounge at lunches to talk about him and all the weirdness that surrounded him. It's like he could read my mind. I swear he somehow made all textbooks float up off the desks and hit the floor this morning. Those were just a few of the rumors going around amongst us teachers. I always tried to shy away from gossip. What if Tommy could read minds too? What would he do to us if he could see how hated he really was? Things continued on like this for years. I would smile at Tommy whenever I would see him in the hallways, and things remained uneventful until Tommy hit the 9th grade. Tommy had to pair up with a partner for a science lab project, a simple dissection of a frog. From what the teacher of the class told me, he, nor anybody else, had ever seen Tommy so into anything before. He was actively sharing his excitement over the frog's intestines and bones with his less than enthusiastic lab partner. Unfortunately, this is where everything gets really dark. After the class, nobody could find Tommy. his lab partner, and about a dozen scalpels. It wasn't uncommon for students to ditch class, but this was Tommy we're talking about, and his missing partner and 12 fucking blades. A few teachers, including myself, went to search for him at a recess that day, but it was an unfortunate janitor that found him and the other student. He called all of us to the teacher's lounge, pale-faced and shaking. He said he had called the police, and we need to get the students somewhere safe and lock down the school. We all asked what was going on, and he told us. He had found Tommy in the upstairs bathroom, dissecting his lab partner. Only he wasn't doing it himself, the janitor explained. The scalpels were whizzing around Tommy's screaming lab partner, making incisions and pulling out organs as Tommy sketched everything down into a book. When Tommy saw the janitor, he apparently turned around, nonplussed about the whole thing, and said, "Oh, hey, Mr. S. I was curious about how Marc worked. Is everybody like this on the inside?" The janitor apparently mustered up a smile and made an excuse about getting back to work before making like a bat out of hell and racing back to us. We quickly put the school into lockdown, the way you would if you had an active shooter in the building. I watched the live feed of the school's security cameras from a laptop in the teacher's lounge to see Tommy roaming the empty halls. Locks broke off of lockers as he passed them, while the doors fluttered open and closed frantically, like the panicked wings of butterflies. I could see he was visibly confused, probably wondering where everyone had gone. The police and SWAT arrived pretty quickly. I watched the cameras as they surrounded him, automatic rifles pointed at his head, probably yelling at him to get on the ground. When Tommy just nonchalantly turned around to walk the other way, though, they opened fire. The bullets had barely left their guns before stopping mid-air to reposition themselves and continue their trajectory into their owners' skulls. 5 SWAT team officers hit the floor, dead. All of the staff was huddled like a coven of witches around the laptop now. A coven of middle-aged teacher's salary witches, scared shitless as we saw on screen that Tommy now stood outside the teacher's lounge. We all knew what was coming as the door blasted off its hinges. The faculty panicked and threw any close object they could grab towards Tommy. I remember shouts of, "Get away from me, you little monster, and I'm not fucking dying like this." I was supposed to retire to Florida this year. Eyes popped out of skulls, limbs were ripped from sockets with sick, wet tearing noises, and teachers sailed around the room in the air so fast and with such force that when they hit the ground, they exploded like a balloon full of jelly. And the whole time, I just crouched in the corner, shaking and terrified. Eventually, I was all that was left alive in the room with Tommy. He made his way over to me as I was sure it was the end. "Mr. H." He spoke my name the way a student would before asking to use the washroom. "Where is everybody? Did I do something wrong?" I couldn't sugarcoat it. He had spared me to this point, and if nobody was going to tell him what he was doing was wrong, well, how far would he take this? How many more lives would he snuff out? Yes, Tommy," I managed to stammer out. "You've killed these people. You understand that's wrong, don't you?" I didn't mean to. I was just standing up for myself. I glanced over to the laptop to see more SWAT heading to the teacher's lounge. "Tommy, please," I said, as softly and kindly as I could under such duress. "You have to make up for what you've done, okay? Some men are on their way here now to take you somewhere safe. Every crime has a punishment, and what you've done here is a crime." I don't remember my exact words, but they were something like that, and Tommy nodded and raised his hands to the air just as SWAT got to the door. They arrested Tommy, and he remained as calm and emotionless as ever as they lead him to an armored truck in the parking lot. The events of that day were largely covered up, and Tommy was placed in a high-security prison. I would visit him from time to time over the years. He told me I was the only one besides some government officials or FBI types, his words, that ever did. I didn't know why he let himself just sit in that prison year after year. I was thankful about it, though. I thought whatever words I managed to squeak out to him before his arrest must have really stuck. He hadn't changed a whole lot mentally either, it seemed. He was still very much that quiet kid drawing pictures in the dirt I remembered from long ago. But the reason I'm writing this, the reason I've broken as many years of silence as I have NDAs on the matter, is because last night I got a call from the prison. 2 guards that patrolled Tommy's cell were found dead, and he was nowhere to be found. I don't know if he just finally got bored or what. It doesn't help matters that he's grown into the most average, unassuming-looking man ever. Caucasian, average height, build, hazel eyes. He could be anywhere right now, and it has been a while since I last visited him. God help me if he decides I hadn't made the right call after all, and he wants payback for all the years he spent just whittling time away behind bars. Tommy, if you're reading this right now, I'm sorry, but I can't ever see you again. I can't see any more people suffer through so much. I know you're probably just confused, and maybe even scared right now, but I hope you know to do the right thing. After I post this, I'll be heading into my garage to run a hose from the exhaust of my car through the driver's side window, and maybe listen to my favorite REM album one last time. To everybody else, please stay in your homes, lock your doors, and keep your loved ones close. Good luck.